here it comes out in the forefront.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You just named off everything that's going to go on at the conference. Before I comment on that, he's had his hand up for a bit. Yeah?
There's research that started up a few years back. It's called cymatics.
Mm.
And cymatics deals with turn on to
coming off of this. And they said,
Our workshop speaker this afternoon is Vernon Roth. I want to welcome you all to the 2011 Extraordinary Technology Conference. And Vernon, it's always a challenge to introduce him because one of the things that happens in this field is sometimes professional relationships turn into friendships. And in a way, that's one of the most wonderful parts of being in this field because so many people are open to friendship. Vernon has worked a lot with Ancient Tech, a company that makes and provides different ointments and salves and things like that. And he is literally responsible for how healthy I feel right now because one of his products has actually been working very well for my own personal situation. Vernon said, in way of introduction, the best thing to say is that his work stands for itself. I really believe that. It's just incredible work, and let's welcome Vernon Roth.
thank you. All right, here we go. When I was approached about speaking here at the conference, I had a very set idea and set agenda on what I was going to be speaking on and presenting. And in the course of this summer, some really amazing things happened, and I've had to re-examine my paradigm of the universe. And so I'm going to be presenting some of that today. Perspectives can change, ideas can change, but we are on the cutting edge, the absolute forefront of the experimental community. And to finish the analogy, that we were talking about a little bit earlier, when the university gets something, he mentioned that it's 20 years old. These experiments saying that light produced magnetism is now being done in the university, and they're saying, oh wow, we found a new source of energy because light can create magnetism in these rods, and it oscillates and it changes, and all we have to do is let the sunlight flow through the rods and we'll have power. This is 20-year-old technology, and I know the guys that did it in their basement 20 years ago. Okay? So what we have to do, and I'll talk a little bit more about the mental paradigm that we have to adopt as we go through this presentation. What we have to do is we have to adopt the paradigm that says, I can, not somebody else can. We can't wait for it to be available in Walmart. We've got to create it in our own sphere. One of the well, let us move forward. Oh, look, I have a button here, and I can move forward. Okay, my work is all with water, and I found that water is one of the most important things that we can ever study. This year I had some really amazing discoveries, and I saw some really amazing things. I saw water levitate this year. There are some people in the audience that saw this with me. I saw a column of 3 ounces of water literally levitating off of a grain of sand because someone understood the essential nature of water. Okay? Let me tell you something. I'm gonna throw some numbers out here, but I want to blow a paradigm here real quick. Since this is a workshop and we don't have a firm definite time limit, try this experiment sometime. Okay? Go out and gather rainwater. Okay? Go out and gather rainwater and get about 1 gallon or 2 gallons of the rainwater, put it into a glass jar, a large glass jar, and let it sit and ferment, maybe, or just sit and age. Set it out in the sun, set it out someplace covered so it can't evaporate. Let it sit and age. You're going to let it sit and age for about 2 or 3 months, give or take. Then you take that gallon of water. Remember, you got 1 gallon of water, and so we're going to distill it. And we're not going to use the stainless steel distiller that you buy at Walmart for $75. Although those are a good deal. Don't get the aluminum ones, get the stainless steel. We're going to distill it in like an alcohol distiller, maybe glass, maybe stainless steel, but a really nice one. You distill off 1 quart of water, okay? And we're going to set that quart of water, and we're going to set it over here, and we're going to call that fire, all right? We're going to distill off another quart of water, and we're going to set that right here. We're going to call that one air. We're going to distill off a 3rd quart of water, and we're going to call that earth. And then we have to distill the last one. We're going to distill the last one, and we'll have 1 last quart, and that's we're going to call that water. So we've created what they call a fractal. Okay, we've got earth, air, or excuse me, fire, air, earth, and water. Now, take those quarts and freeze them. All right, or try and freeze them. Because what you will actually find, what I found this winter, was that the first quart of water that I distilled off, that I labeled fire, wouldn't freeze at minus 10 degrees. All right? Would not freeze at all. It got a little goldish hue to it. So I thought that was really interesting. Goldish hue doesn't freeze. Now, I've experienced non-freezing water before. The electric water will oftentimes not freeze until you shake it and move it. Yes?
Is that C or F?
What's that?
Minus 10 C or F?
Minus 10 F Fahrenheit. I usually don't play with Celsius. The second quart of water, oh heck, that freezes. That freezes somewhere around 32 to 30 degrees. But what's interesting is, when that froze, all sorts of little air bubbles formed in the freezing water, and it expanded up just incredibly, a large magnitude of size, as if it was expanding for all of the other water that you'd separated out, okay? And interestingly, we labeled that air, right? So literally, that is the fractal of air from water. The third quart of water, which we labeled earth, that's frozen. That freezes somewhere around 32 to 30 degrees as well. But it hasn't expanded at all, and it's completely clear. And the last quart of water that we have labeled water, well, heck, that doesn't freeze, and I've heard stories of people taking it down to minus 100, okay? So what I've just done is I've kind of blown the paradigm of water freezing at 32 degrees. I've completely changed all of this. You can try this. This is an old alchemical trick, because every single part of that water, every single fractal that we just separated, has a distinct purpose, okay? And if you want to play with hydrogen, you take the fire and the air fractals that you did and put that in your hydrogen and have fun with it, okay? Because this is a paradigm shift, okay? When I learned this, I said, wait a minute, this can't be possible, and I tried it and I did it. And that's just like a little bit of what happened, and we'll talk about more because, like I said, my mind was blown so many times this year. It's been amazing. I mean, you start to think that you actually know something, you start to think that you're actually on the right track, and then you discover, wait a minute, everything that I taught maybe was wrong. I was just at a, who was at the ANOTA conference out back in Georgia? Oh, there you guys are. Okay. It was really amazing because I said a few things. I was at a international alchemy conference, and there was about 75 alchemists, Ormus specialists from around the world. And I said a few things that kind of blew their paradigm, and they came up to me afterwards and said, "Wait a minute, that can't be right." And I said, "Who told you that?" that can't be right. And said, well, science says that can't be right. And I said, the same scientists that say that 99% of what we do is impossible? So think about that as we're going through this today, okay? I also want to throw out some numbers here. I want to throw out some paradigm shifting numbers. How many people are there in the world today? 6.6 billion. We're getting close to 7 billion. 40 years, how many people are going to be there? If populations continue to expand the way they are going, we'll be looking about 9 billion in 40 years, okay? Here's a number for you. In the next 40 years, we have to produce more food on this planet than we have in the last 8,000, okay? Now, when you look at the numbers, we waste about half of the food that is grown on this planet. This has nothing to do with greed. It has nothing to do with we're going to keep this population under our thumb. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's simply a flawed system of producing food. But we waste about half of our food. But even if we had all of that food, we still have to find a completely new paradigm of growing food in the next 40 years. Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble. And then we'll be back to the 5 billion, as he said. All right. So these are some numbers, and I'll throw out some more of these numbers that you need to be thinking about as we go into this conference. It's not just this lecture. It's this entire conference should be a paradigm shift, something that teaches us something new, a new way of thinking, a new way of acting, a new way of resonating with our world. So we're going to be talking about hydrogen. These gentlemen are very interested in hydrogen, and you're all here. This is a significant portion of the hydrogen lecture. Safety, the art of triple redundancy. Anybody Star Trek fans? Yeah, okay. And they're always about multiple layers of redundancy. Somehow they always seem to fail, but we won't go into that. I love safety. I had some explosions in my shop this year. Oh boy, howdy, they were interesting. Because when you play with hydrogen and oxygen, it is the most explosive force in the universe. And you have to be careful with that. So I really love safety. What you see on the let's see here. Look at that. Okay, what you see on the left-hand side, is there a way to dim the lights on the screen, guys? Is that possible? What you see on the left-hand side is my safety setup. Down here is my hydrogen device. It looks a lot like this. I'll show you another one in that box. It looks very similar. The gas comes out of the hydrogen device, goes up here to a little reservoir. Thank you very much. Goes up to a little reservoir and cycles. So the hydrogen device pushes hydrogen and water up into there. The water returns down there. And there's a little cooling heat sink right there. I don't actually need it, but I just put it there for kicks and giggles. Hydrogen forms in here, goes up through this tube and into this column of water. A column of water working with hydrogen is very important because if you have a column of water, you actually, remember come back to water here, you actually magnify the power of the hydrogen, okay? So if you just have it going through an inch or two of water, that's good for safety, but the taller the water, you magnify the hydrogen. Now here's one to play with. Put a rodent coil around that. And then shine ultraviolet light through that. Okay? You multiply the power of your hydrogen. You multiply the power of your Brown's gas. Those are some secrets that, that took me a long time to figure out and learn about. Actually, what's interesting about using ultraviolet light is very similar to, anybody familiar with laser refinement of uranium? This is not secret. This is not a top secret thing. Uranium is refined by literally a vacuum distillation of the uranium ore, running it through a column like this, and hitting it with lasers that are resonating at the frequency of the desired uranium. So we take uranium, what is it, 92? No, I don't remember. It's fairly low, and we can make uranium-235 or 238 or whatever, using simply vacuum distillation, resonating it with lasers, and boom, we drop out and we have vapor deposit, and we create uranium, or we create refined uranium. Same thing with plutonium. It's a common process, but what we're seeing here is, hey, we're going to change the nature of an element using just frequency input. There's a paradigm thought right there. Okay, so the gas flows up through this column of water, and it's actually only filled about that high, but I'll tell you what, 10 liters a minute will force bubbles all the way up to the top of there. If you ever see, if somebody says, well, I've got a unit that creates 10 liters a minute, and if you're not seeing bubbles that are half the size of your fist coming out of there like crazy, they're lying. Or they're thinking that they have an ideal scenario, but I guess that's a more polite way of putting it. 10 liters a minute will force that water up that tube, and bubbles will come all the way up this high. Okay, so that's my first stage, and I have a safety valve that I can just cut that off and let it evaporate out, and or let it boil off into the air if something happens over here. Next, the water travels through this black tube and into this stainless steel bubbler. Anybody familiar with George Wiseman's work? Anybody seen a George Wiseman Brown's gas generator? Okay, he has a stainless steel thing that's about 1.5 feet tall, 12 inches on the base, and it's a very heavy-duty device, and that's his flashback arrestor. That's what you're seeing right there. That's a safety. That will absorb the blast of a hydrogen flashback. And you don't want the hydrogen flashback. That is my last line of safety. Actually, this is my last line of safety, but this is my last line of real safety. And that keeps any hydrogen blast from coming back out. And I've got a little sight gauge on the side so I can see how much water is in there and all that. The gas then flows out of the top of that up into this to another safety device, and that is this one. So when I come up and I'll pass this around. Come up here and I'll somebody. There you go. Yeah, take that, pass it around. That is a flashback arrestor, okay? Who here has bought flashback arrestors? Okay. Really good flashback arrestor. You get it for, you get a 2-pack for $40 at US Air gas supply, that type of stuff. I've tried it. It works with hydrogen. It works with Brown's gas. So it's very important. Don't go out and buy a plastic thing. You can make a plastic thing really easily for this stage, but over here you want a metal flashback arrestor, okay? Like I said, I've had explosions. I made explosions on purpose to see where things can fail, okay? Now, if that's not insane, I don't know what is. But I did it on purpose to see where things can fail. So that's your first line of defense. Listen, if you don't turn off a torch fast enough, you can get a flashback. Okay? Now, how weird is that? That's really fun to play with. You can make your own flashback arrestor using one like this. And I'll pass this around. There you go. These cost about $40 at surplus stores and such. Really good little stainless steel deals. They are so dynamic, you can use them for a lot of things. Yes? I don't use brass wool or stainless. They have something inside of that flashback arrestor, but I don't use that. I use water. Water in this vessel, and then whatever mechanism they use inside of that little flashback arrestor we're passing around. because it's just easier state of mind. It is an industry standard. They use it for hydrogen. They use it for explosive gases. So I just said, all right, I've played around. I've blown some stuff up. I want to use this here. And like I said, it's $40 for a pair. So, you know, it's a nice way to stay safe. You don't actually need this in a car, by the way, but we'll get to that. All right, and this is an up close of the bubbler device. The art of triple redundancy. You know what? That didn't make it into the car. Pressure switches. There are pressure switches you can get for $16 from Allied Switch. If you turn off your device, it automatically shuts, or if you close your torch, it automatically shuts off when you get to 2 or 3 psi. Very important to play with that. So that's something to think about. Okay. This is my preparatory deal. I want everybody to be aware of the safety involved. Like I've said, I've had explosions happen. I've made explosions, and you want to avoid that as much as possible. I've been very blessed. My angels have blessed me. I had one thing explode in my early alchemical days. I always set it there and just let it go. And one day, something inside my head said, "No, you want to make that look good sitting there." Like, why? It's just pressure. Well, you want to make that look good. So I propped it up and put it everywhere, or put some things around it to keep it from falling over. And then I started my experiments over here, and boom! This thing had exploded. It sent basically the big thing that you're passing around. It sent the top of that through the ceiling, through a couple of joists, and embedded in the asphalt shingles on the outside of my house. Okay, the 3 ball bearings inside of it missed my head like that, just whew, and embedded themselves like bullets in the wall behind me. And the base that it was sitting on a steel tabletop that was half an inch thick, and it put a nice little concave indentation in there about a half an inch thick inside that thing. So that was not hydrogen, but I'm telling you, I learned, when death, knocks at your door like that, you learn a few things. So safety is key. All right, we're going to move on, because I wanted to stress this, and the reason why I wanted to stress this is because I saw a lot of people, and I'll talk about this later a little bit more, is that I saw a lot of people playing with hydrogen on the internet, and it was actually kind of scary because you got guys cooking things and then feeding it into fans, blowing it into your house. You're breathing you're breathing fumes from burning metal and stuff like that. I like people, and I like people to come back to the conference, and I don't want anybody to die, so please think about that. Okay, we're going to talk about some of the ways that we can generate hydrogen. My background with hydrogen is that I've been working with internal combustion engines, and so we take the power off of the alternator, we put it into the hydrogen device, and then we feed the hydrogen back into the internal combustion engine. And this works. I mean, we were 84% on a Honda Accord, 112% on GMC Yukons, 30% on semi trucks, 40% on the engines running oil wells and such. But there's a problem in this world, and the problem is a paradigm, and it's getting very difficult. Actually, putting these things on semi trucks is now very much illegal. Okay, just barely found out about this. A friend of mine runs a shipping company, and through a fluke, one of his trucks was running almost empty loads for about a month, and so his gas mileage went from 4 to 7. Okay, which is about the increase that we were seeing with hydrogen, 4 miles to the gallon to 7 miles to the gallon with full loads. But when all the numbers went through the system, they had an inspector there within the next week wanting to find out what they'd put on that semi-truck to change the gas mileage, because they were going to cut it off. Okay? They're cutting off hydrogen devices, they're cutting off magnets, they're cutting off things, the little devices that are going in there. And they're being quiet about it, but it's happening. So if you're working in that field, be careful. So what I'm talking about today, one of my paradigms is the idea of how do we as a people survive any cataclysmic or paradigm shifting changes in our world, okay? So that's one of the things that want to talk about today. And so I started looking at different ways to generate hydrogen. And of course, there's the conventional, we hook up a solar panel, or excuse me, hook up a windmill generator to an alternator and run it directly into your hydrogen device. And this device right here, which I have to say, and I'll talk about it in a little while, this is probably one of the most important devices I have ever made and ever talked about, okay? It doesn't look like much. It looks like a couple of pieces of PVC plastic and a stainless steel top, but we'll get to that. But this device is my first device that I've ever made that runs specifically off solar. And what you see here, this little solar panel, it's a tool charger from Harbor Freight. Oh, thank you. It's a tool charger from Harbor Freight, and it doesn't generate a whole lot of power, but that device plus this device creates 20 liters an hour of gas, okay? Now that's not a whole lot when you're trying to boost a car or boost a, you know, we put these things on big giant tugboat engines, really amazing results with that. So 20 liters an hour is not much to talk about, but if you store 20 liters an hour and you do that for 6 hours a day, suddenly you have enough fuel to cook all your food. And you don't have to buy propane. You don't have to, you don't have to be part of the system. Suddenly, you have taken a step towards independence. So, I built this to illustrate that point, but then it became so much more. Solar, of course, the device up here, is there, oh wait, well, I'll show you in a little bit. A friend of mine has a big place in the mountains. He runs shipping, and he's a pretty interesting little fellow. He ordered a hydrogen device that he wants to plug into his diesel generator. And what we actually figured out was that this device that I will show you, plus maybe one more, hooked up to he's got a 2,000 watt array of solar panels, hooked up to a 2,000 watt array of solar panels, will boost his diesel engine 90%, because there's no parasitic load. He's not pulling off of the engine and putting back into it. He's got 2,000 watts of solar panel, boosts his diesel engine, and he can actually run his entire facility off of a diesel generator plus this, okay? So we'll talk about that in a little bit more, but that's one of the things that you can do with this. Hydro, of course, there's really no difference between any of these. Wind generates, most windmill generators generate DC electricity that you can plug into a hydrogen device that is tuned for it. And we can talk about the tuning here pretty soon. Solar, same deal. Oh, I went to college this year and took some alternative energy courses, which were very interesting. I learned about 3 days worth of stuff in the entire semester, which is really sad. But one of the interesting things is that it's so easy now to go off grid. Okay, it is so easy. It requires money, but that's another story entirely, and we'll talk more about that later. But so somebody remind me about that. But you can go off grid in so many different ways and actually send money back. And here's a little trick. There are incentives in your taxes to refit with solar or wind or some type of alternative power. And anybody know the percentages? Anybody know the percentage of refund? Yes?
Well, in Santa Fe, it's 30% out of the county and another 10% federal, I think.
Okay, so he can get about 40% refund on a solar system. So if you put in a $10,000 system, you only spend actually $6,000. But here's how to get it for free. Yeah. I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear that. Yes, it is the cost of materials, so you're going to have to do the work yourself to put it in place, is what he said, not the labor, just the cost of materials. But here's how you get it for free. There is another tax form that allows you to depreciate all the technology that you put into your house, and you can do it all in 1 year, and literally you can get it for free. And a friend of mine did this. He put in a $60,000 solar system, got the tax rebates, and then did the tax form, depreciated it all in 1 year, and he got the actually depreciated in 2 years because he didn't need it all in 1 year. Got the whole thing for free, all taken care of. Yes?
That's only applicable if you're running a business. If you're running a residence, that's not.
Thank you. That's all if you're running a business. Okay. I've been running a business for so long I forget the residential side of it. I apologize.
This year it's 10%. That's it. If you're running a business in a residence, then you can fraction it automatically. Yes, you can. You have to be very
You do have to be careful, and there are hoops to jump through, and I recommend people actually create some business so that they get certain amount of tax leniency. Yes?
In California, there's a company to install the solar. It doesn't cost you a penny. They install it, they own it, and it generates electricity, and the electricity bill, the amount of electricity, it pays them back for the solar. So they don't have electricity bill, and it doesn't cost you anything. So
Well, that's amazing. What he said was that there's a company in California that if you will allow them to install their technology on your house, you can. They own the alternative solar technology, and they get their refund off of the amount of money that's generated from the electric company buying electricity back. But we're kind of getting off subject here. We could talk about that. And what I'm saying is that if you do the research, and we did a lot of this. We ran all the numbers at the university this year. It's actually easier to go off grid than it is now than it ever has been in the history of this country. So very important stuff here. Who was I talking to about Stirling cycle engines today? Oh, he's not here. Well, I guess he didn't get the memo on when it started. My apologies. Hydrogen is a very interesting gas, and we'll talk about this more, but you can use Stirling cycle engines to power hydrogen, and you don't have to, once again, you won't have to buy propane, you won't have to buy cooking fuels and stuff like that. How many people have played with a Bedini motor? How many people actually got just the little tiny one to actually run? I've played that. It doesn't create a whole lot of power, does it? But what if you had, it just creates enough to light a light bulb, okay? Well, that's all this thing takes to run a light bulb, and that's 20 liters a minute. And if you had 5 of those things going, and you had all going into 1 or 2 of these things, you can generate your own power. You can generate your own hydrogen off of the Bedini motor. And this is paradigm shifting stuff. We're not going to try and run the house. We're not going to try and run the building. We just need a little bit to boost ourselves along, and we'll talk about boosting. Vacuum is really interesting. Vacuum is, to me, the other side of the equation. You've got the Einsteinian physics, big, powerful explosions and blowing things up. Vacuum is the red-headed stepchild, okay? What you see here, this is a vacuum aspirator pump. Anybody played with one of those in chemistry? We boiled water in 10 minutes with one of those things, using just flowing water, okay? That was the other thing for building this device, is it can run off of vacuum. Vacuum assisted. Here's the problem with vacuum assisted as it is now. What type of catalyst solution do you guys use in your hydrogen? Potassium hydroxide, sodium hydroxide, which one? Okay. Here's the deal with the vacuum. If you have a bubbler in a vacuum, you will suck the water out, okay? You will eventually pull the water out of this. And we did this on a friend's race car, okay? He built this little Formula Atlantic race car. It eats Porsches and Ferraris for breakfast. It's a Toyota Celica. But its vacuum on his air intake was so powerful it sucked all the water out of the tube. But boy howdy, it got great gas. It was getting 40 miles to the gallon. A Formula Atlantic race car getting 40 miles to the gallon because of the vacuum assist on the hydrogen. But here's the deal. You can't use KNOH, NOH, you can't use any of the hydroxides because they don't like metal. So what you have to do is you have to create a new catalyst. Do not play with baking soda. It will eat up your plates. It's a bad idea. Anyway, so vacuum is one of the most underrated technologies in our world. This is a picture of a new advanced Stirling cycle engine, very powerful. This is a vertical windmill technology. I'm a real big fan of vertical windmills because vertical windmills do not produce the high-pitch hum that drives people insane and liquefies your organs. Okay? How many people live anywhere near one of those giant horizontal blade windmills? Have anybody heard the sound coming off those things? It's like living underneath a jet engine that never goes away. Okay, this is the answer to that technology. This year I got involved with a family that is funding the development of large-scale horizontal vertical windmill technology, and what it is it can go inside of a grain silo. Okay. You can't tell it's there. It goes inside of a grain silo. The air goes in through it through ducts. It's more efficient than conventional windmill technology, and it can go up to 130 mile per hour winds. Okay, the absolute max on a horizontal windmill is 60 miles per hour, but that we lose our power curve at that point. So these things can go up to 130 miles an hour, and they're silent. They're beautiful. And anyone can build this. You can go out and get a squirrel cage fan for 20 bucks or pull it out of the junkyard, put that together, I've done this, it works, put on a little alternator and power your hydrogen device. It works, it's great. Hydrogen for heat. We're going to talk about hydrogen for heat. Hydrogen is not just for boosting cars anymore. This is a cool little deal. Hey, John? Could I get video number 1, please? Thank you very much. I'll talk about this in a minute. This is a little experiment. You can find it on YouTube. I was too wrapped up to record my experiments with this. But what you see, don't do sound. No sound on this one. What we're going to see is a Mr. Heater device powered by hydrogen. Okay, Mr. Heater is a little heating device that you hook up to a propane tank. Not this one. That's number 3, I think. Go to number 1. Go to video number 1, please. We'll get to that. Don't worry. It'll be fun. There we go. Video number 1. There we are. Okay, so here's the propane. Here's the propane running. And that's what the Mr. Heater looks like. Anybody use a Mr. Heater at all? Okay. Now we're adding the HHO. That's 1 liter a minute. You see the change in there? He's going to take it away here in a second. And there it goes back down. Thank you very much, John. What he's doing here is he's boosting hydrogen. Just like we're boosting cars that that we were talking about before. In this video, he's not hydrogen. He's boosting propane. Okay. Now propane is one of the cleanest burning fuels, but it still has issues. And by adding, let's turn off that other one. Thank you. By adding hydrogen, we can make that propane burn completely clean. We can make it burn hotter, but what they're kind of going about it wrong. They can melt their device if they're not careful. So what we do Oh, that's the end. Back. Oh, here, I'll get it. Okay. What we have down here in the corner is our regulator device. Now, you can go out and you can buy an expensive regulator, or you can get one of these. This is a regulator, goes on a propane tank, and you can control that so fine, you can control it down to milliliters per hour, okay? And I'll pass this around. Here. That's the system I use to control, and I don't use a Mr. Heater, I use a blower furnace instead, but that's a system that I use to control just a tiny amount of propane. And so what happens is the hydrogen burns the propane instead of just the propane burning in the air, and it boosts the efficiency, and you use a tenth of the amount of propane that you would normally use. And so you're running off of a little solar panel, you run this, you generate the hydrogen here, run it into there, and you have practically free heat coming out of your propane generator. But like I said, you use this little device here, and you can dial down the propane so much you just got a little tiny trickle, and the real deal is done by the hydrogen. Okay, and it works. Put it into my shop. I'm going to use it this winter. It's going to be the sole source of heat in my shop this winter because it's been a really exciting summer. What you do is you'll see that person's hand right there. There is a little opening in that heater. There's a little opening that allows the propane to mix with the oxygen as it goes up the deal and into the burner. What you do is you tape off one side and you put your hydrogen in there. Okay? You turn it on full blast with your propane. Start putting your hydrogen in, and then just back that off until you get it to the proper temperature, and boom, you're using solar power, generating hydrogen, heating your place. Yes.
Vernon, just to be clear, you're not talking about pure hydrogen. You're talking about.
Yes. Oh, I apologize. I am so sorry. Everything that I've talked about to this point is Brown's gas, HHO. I will talk about the pure hydrogen in just a minute. I apologize. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. This is hydrogen and oxygen, HHO, Brown's gas, whatever you want to call it. I'll talk about the pure stuff here in a minute. Okay. Moving right along. We're still on hydrogen for heating. These are the possibilities that we all have. None of this is experimental. Well, I mean, it's experimental. None of this is theoretical. Anyone can do it. This is how like I said, this is how I'm heating my shop this year. I might even heat my house with it because I've got radiant subfloor heating and run it through heating water and use that system. Okay. We're going to heat air. Now, anybody played with Brown's gas at all? You create a flame about this big, okay? You got the little torch here and the flame's coming out there, and you can run your hand through it and stuff. You're not really running your hand through it, okay? You're not touching it. It will burn through you. What is happening is that the torch is literally burning the air as it flows out away from the tip, okay? And when you move it, that torch, the real fire goes down to about ½ an inch. And then when you stop, it goes back through. So if you held your hand in front of it, you will burn through your hand. But you can move your hand, unlike oxygen acetylene or regular hydrogen torch, which will cut your hand or burn your hand in half. It takes a few moments for it to index there. Another interesting thing about hydrogen is that Brown's gas will index itself to whatever it's burning through. So if you have it there and you're waving it around in the air and you take a measurement on it, you are running about 180 degrees. That's one of the indicators of decent Brown's gas. Okay? You take that and you put it into water and it won't boil the water because it indexes itself to whatever you're working on. However, you fill this thing with water and you take that torch and you put it on the bottom of this thing, you're going to have boiling water in seconds. I've tried it. It's fun. Okay? It indexes itself to whatever it comes up against. And what was his name? Eric White. Who was the gentleman that talked about Brown's gas a couple years back? Oh, static. It's an avalanche of electromagnetic energy. Anybody tracking the solar flares this year? We've had computers wiped out by the solar flares. It's been fun dealing with that. Because it's not like you've got a surge protector, that doesn't do anything. It's electrostatic pressure in the air, it's great. Which is good for free energy, but not so good for computers, telecommunications, sound systems, you know, that type of thing. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to find a material. If we're going to heat air, we're going to have to find a material that we can heat up and heat the air secondarily. Anybody who played with Brown's gas know what doesn't disintegrate under Brown's gas? Anybody? Okay. There's a couple of things. I can't say them all because it's technology that I didn't develop and such, but I can say cast iron. Cast iron does not disintegrate under Brown's gas. Certain types of silica, ferrosilica, you can heat it, you can nearly melt it, but it will not disintegrate. So you here's what I did in my experiments. I took a little aluminum tube like this, punched some little holes into it, put suspended a cast iron bolt in the center of this thing, put my torch in there, heated the cast iron bolt, and then I had a little, this isn't the one, I left it at home because it was too big of an apparatus, and pumped air through an impeller fan up through this thing, and son of a gun, I've got air temperatures that are reaching 700-800 degrees coming out the top here, okay? Just from a little hydrogen torch. And I'm only running, you know, about 2 liters a minute through it, which equates out to about 200 to 300 watts of power. And I've got 600 degrees of air, okay? I mean, it's like a heat gun for crying out loud, but I'm not running 30 amps off of, 15 amps off of the deal. I'm only running about 250, 300 watts. So what we've done is we've managed to find a way to use the inherent characteristics of the Brown's gas to perform something that wouldn't normally be feasible. If you try and do this with compressed hydrogen, it will not work. Your power to heat ratio is way out of proportion. But because Brown's gas indexes itself to whatever you're putting it against, that you can use. You have to be very careful that you don't move it off to the side, otherwise you get a stream of Brown's gas coming out the side of your torch. It burns through aluminum pretty darn quick. Yeah?
How about carbon?
It doesn't burn carbon, but carbon has a nasty habit of popping and blasting off, and you have to deal with the carbon emissions, not carbon emissions. Actually, thank you for bringing that up because I'm going to jump on a soapbox here. Carbon emissions are not the terrible thing, greenhouse gases that we'd like to believe that they are, okay? In one earthquake eruption in Iceland, released more carbon greenhouse gases than the entire world produces in a year, okay? One eruption. And how many of those do we have around the world today? What you really have to think about when you start thinking about emissions and bad things for the environment, volatile organic compounds. Those are the killer. VOCs and unburned hydrocarbons. Don't even care about carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, okay? Not even an issue. It's like anything with the government, like we're in the middle of a debt crisis, right? No, man, I'll share that stuff off the record later, but anything that people say, oh my God, look how bad this is, it's a rope-a-dope. Look at this, look at this. I'm going to take you from the other side. So, think about that. Anything that is big in the media, start looking to the things that nobody's mentioning, okay? So we're seeing this carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide. Oh my God, it's so terrible. Look at what's really happening. VOCs getting inside of our brain, lowering our ability to think, our ability to reason. Unburned hydrocarbons going in there and messing up our organ function. Those are the real issues. We don't care about that stuff. This is 5 years of research into that whole deal, and it's been an interesting trip. Okay, so we've got, we don't vaporize cast iron, so we're heating this thing. We're pulling out 600 degrees. I've seen people playing with this on the internet, And it's absolutely terrifying to me because they're heating up, they're using hydrogen, they're heating up things like copper. It's hard to cut copper with Brown's gas. They're heating up things like copper, they're heating different elements, they're heating carbon, and they're hooking it up to a computer fan, and they're blowing it out into their room. How many people weld in here? Okay, you put that torch on the metal, what starts happening? Starts getting smoke, you're breathing fumes, you're breathing carbon because it's oxygen acetylene, you're breathing steel particles, you're breathing whatever you're cutting off, okay? Whatever you're cutting through, whatever you're welding, whatever you're doing, you're breathing that stuff, and boy howdy, Parkinson's, anybody? Heavy metal poisoning, metal fume fever, oh, that's a fun one, okay? These idiots are literally heating up something and blowing it directly out into the room. This is bad, really bad. Don't ever play with it. That's why a heat exchanger, okay? You take this, you run it around to an intercooler off of a Dodge Cummins turbo diesel, run it around there, got your fan in the intercooler, blowing through there, and run the whole thing back through a bucket of water into your fan system, and you trap all of those fumes in the water and you don't actually breathe it. The heat exchanger is the equivalent of these things to make certain no sodium hydroxide gets into your engine, okay? This is very, very important. So if you're going to do work with heat, use a heat exchanger, okay? This has nothing to do with the Mr. Heater because that is actually burning of the fuel and a catalytic response, so you don't really care about that. But if you're heating things up, use a heat exchanger. Okay, we're going to move on. I'm going to talk about some of the possibilities with the Brown's gas. Anybody familiar with gasification? Okay, what is the efficiency of an internal combustion engine? Anybody? 14%. 14, 25. What's that? 27. So they change all over the place. Whatever engine, that 5.6 in the GMC Yukon is 14%. The high efficiency Hondas are 27 to 30. They now they're getting 57% efficiency off of the Toyota Prius, but that's because it's the most efficient way to get power to the engines, but we won't get into that. We now have the ability, off-the-shelf technology, to run engines at 90% efficiency using gasification. They do it down in the jungles of South America, Africa, stuff like that, in remote locations where nobody talks about it. We're going to do cool stuff back over here away. Gasification is the way they do that, okay? You can boost the efficiency. Basically what gasification is, it says I have a fuel. I don't have any fuels up here. I have a fuel that needs to have its energy released. So I'm going to heat it up in a certain way, and I'm going to release the energy. Okay, you can do it with coconut, you can do it with wood, you can do it with anything. As a matter of fact, all the new stoves, all the new types of stoves that you can buy, they're not wood-burning stoves. They're cool gasification units. They just look like wood-burning stoves, okay? Very cool stuff. Some of them 80% efficient. I just put in 2 of them at my house. Pretty cool stuff. Could you get John? I need him to play video number 2. I'm going to show you a little video on gasification and how to use Brown's gas to release the hidden energy potential in something. Now, what you've got to understand is when you burn something, you're combusting the substance. Could you cue up video number 2, please? Thank you. You're combusting the substance. Excuse me. Yep, there we go. But if you add enough hydrogen and oxygen to something, anything, absolutely anything can become a fuel, okay? And what he's got in here is a soda can filled with wood chips, okay? And he's lighting it with a propane burner. You can see the propane burner down there. Now, I want you to see how long it takes for this soda can filled with wood chips to start to gasify, okay? You can see some gas fumes coming out of there pretty slowly. These guys are really cool. Knowledge Publications, Roy McAllister's group, talking about hydrogen. What's that? Oh, okay. Pretty cool group. Check out their website. They don't like hydrogen on demand. They've got all sorts of mathematics and flute music telling me why everything that I do is impossible. Okay? But they have a lot of information, and we'll go to another one of their videos later. What he's doing is he's heating up that can. And I want you to see how long this is taking, okay? We're just trying to release the hidden gases in that wood and let us burn more efficiently. Can you jump to the? Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, he's gonna light it now. There we go. Can't see it very well in this light, but it's actually, he's actually got about 6 or 8 inches of flame coming off of there. And that is the most efficient burn of wood on the planet. Now, what is interesting is, if you apply a Brown's gas flame to the bottom of that, you will generate that heat in seconds, okay? There isn't the waiting, there isn't all of that. You'll generate that heat in seconds, especially if you have it in a little cast iron cup or some type of crucible that isn't going to disintegrate. Seconds, and you'll be generating the heat. Oh wow, that thing's like a foot tall. Okay, so this is another possibility of generating heat. You can cook on that. Okay, this is a system of using Brown's gas. Imagine that instead of the propane, using Brown's gas to cook your food on. Okay, and it's the most efficient system. Let's say that's literally just a handful of pellets. You can't do that in a fireplace. You can only do that with a gasification process. There's a friend of mine that is retrofitting a resort in the South China Sea, and he is using high efficiency gasifiers, and they use coconut husks. Okay, literally the byproduct of their coconut industry in town, is powering about 50% of an ecological resort down there on the island. Okay, all their lights, their air conditioners, all of that, all of it's coming from biomass gasification units. Yes.
Do the wood chips finally get consumed?
They do finally get consumed, but when they're consumed, they are pure carbon. Which, yes, you can use it in filtration systems, sand carbon biofiltration systems. Oh, they're awesome. They can take almost everything out of, they can take sewage practically and turn it into drinkable water using carbon and sand. Great stuff. Back there, another question?
So the chips are put inside the can,
Mm-hmm.
and then the torch is hitting into the can itself, right?
Right. What they're using is just a regular little propane cook stove. But what we would do is we would put the torch against the bottom of it to get the heat. You couldn't use a can. This is a demonstration. You would never do this in reality. You could use a coffee can. We have done that for alchemical experiments. You can use a coffee can. Thank you. You can shut that one off and go to the second one, or number 3, if you would, please. Number 3. Thank you so much. As a little shameless plug, they're selling their book. You buy it. It's a great thing to do. But it will discourage people from doing on-demand hydrogen, so remember that. This is another gasification system. This is a gentleman. I'll just let you read it. I'll just step back and be quiet here for a second. So just watch this real quick. You could, but it's in Japanese. That's the back. The video in the background is still playing.
This is the one to start with. Okay.
Can you turn off the other? Task here.
Methods of converting this. This will use all charcoal conversion
So what this gentleman has done basically is he's created a system that you can recycle waste plastic, okay? And I'll talk about the hydrogen aspect of it here in a moment. A friend of mine's actually rebuilding this. All of this is open source, okay? You can buy this device for 12 grand, or you can build it yourself. It's all open source. All he's done is he's created a system he's created a small, cost-effective system. And what it is it's the same deal as the gasification. He pulls a vacuum on a chamber. We can just use this as an example. Oh, this is fun. This is straight out of his machine from glass or plastic bottles and styrofoam container. Okay. He pulls a vacuum on that chamber, heats various parts of it to different temperatures. One part of it is 400, one part of it is 300, one part of it's like 200. Say again? Exactly. He's cracking it, but he's doing it on a small scale. Then the vapors go across and recondense in the water. Now they're playing it down, but there's methane released from this process. Well, methane's the same thing as natural gas. You can take that off and burn it again. So what you have basically is something that looks like this. They can't show it in there, but you fill this with plastic. You heat various parts. You pull a vacuum on it, heat various parts of it, and everything starts to break down because there's no oxygen in there for it to burn. Everything goes off as a vapor and recondenses in the water. Okay, a friend of mine's building this in Utah right now. We wanted to have it available here, but his schedule didn't permit it. But essentially, it is a system whereby a community of people never needs to throw away plastic ever again. You don't even have to take it to the recycler. You can turn it into the very oil or the very fuel that you need in your cars, okay, using plastic and Brown's gas. See, what he's using, he's pulling about 1,000 watts. That machine takes about 1 kilowatt hour to run, okay? And you have to hook it up to the grid, and it pulls down hard. You can do the same thing with the hydrogen, because that's very simple. You just have 3 different torches at varying distances to heat up your chamber at different levels. I didn't realize there was oil on that. So that's what we're doing. I just supplied the hydrogen torch, and he's building the essentially it's a big autoclave unit. Yes. Did you say solar? You could do that, and I was going to mention you can melt steel with it, but it's what he said was that if you have solar condensers, either a dish or a lens can be used, you can generate temperatures in excess of 1,000 degrees using just the sun. And this is all possible. If you have a 60-inch by 60-inch Fresnel lens, you can mount that into a frame and generate over 800 watts of power, okay? Simply using the sun and the lens. 40% of our energy in this country, 40% goes to heating water. That's all. And all of that can be done by the sun, all right? Solar water heating panels, we did that in my alternative power class. We demonstrated how a home or a business or the entire country could literally cut out 40% of their electric bill using just the sun, not the inefficient photovoltaics, but sun heat. And that works, and I encourage people to do that. Here's my issue with that. I always see things worst case scenario. Is there a scenario that we have seen that is possible that you would not see the sun? You would not have the power? Come on, somebody. Cloudy. Nuclear winter, okay. Volcanoes, thank you. Were you from Europe? Oh, okay. Nighttime. All right, all of these are huge issues that we can face. I set about developing the idea for technology that you could do inside of a cave if you could not live outside in the air. And I know that's a little bit extreme, but here we have Fukushima, all right? And we're dealing with, here, let me get it, I'll get it. And we're dealing with a huge amount of radiation in falling on our plants, contaminating the milk supply. First of all, the rainwater in San Francisco as of a month ago was 800 times the EPA maximum for radiation, all coming from Fukushima, media blackout. The milk supply, more than 100 times the allowable radiation, media blackout. Okay, I have friends in Tokyo. All right, they're saying nobody's died yet from Fukushima, but what's radiation poisoning? The Walking Dead. Yes, sir. One and a half million babies in 2 years from Chernobyl. How much more is Fukushima than Chernobyl? It's like 300, what's that? At least. Anyway, I'm not trying to be a fearmonger. I don't do that. I'm giving you guys tools and solutions. Radiation is a boogeyman kept around by the governments and the scientific community. There are 5 different ways of eliminating radiation I could think up off the top of my head, okay? So the research is out there, you can do it. As a matter of fact, I live in Colorado. Our background radiation should be 5 times more than it is right now, but it's not. Do you know why? Pine trees. Pine trees give off negative ions neutralize radiation, drop it out of the sky, okay? I would be concerned if a nuclear bomb went off in Las Vegas, living in Colorado. I would be relatively concerned. But I know so many different ways to get rid of radiation poisoning, both in myself, but the issue is that you deal with it coming from the sky. If it comes down, all my friends with gardens outside, they can all be contaminated like that. You've got to put your gardens under greenhouses, put them inside. There's many different ways. Using this technology, you can generate as much light as you need to feed your gardens inside. So just something to think about. Yes, sir.
How does the sun toxic make your garden toxic?
I wasn't talking about the sun. I was talking about either. Are we there? No. I was talking about radiation fallout. Radiation fallout from the sky from either Fukushima or any other nuclear accident. We've had 3 in the past 6 months, you know. That's kind of, oh, thank you very much. Also, we deal with a lot of, we deal with the chemtrails. We deal with we're seeing metals falling from the sky, for crying out loud. Go out and put a bathtub out there, seed it with a little bit of water, and start collecting the dew on heavy dew mornings, and see what lands there. Analyze it. You'll start finding chromium, hexane, hexavalent chromium. Thank you. Stuff like that falling from our skies. Don't put your gardens outside. Cover them up. Okay. We've seen the gasification. Yes. Yes. Okay. In that the process of the gasification of oil, what you get is a hydrocarbon-based liquid that can either be put directly into a diesel truck. If you use more complex plastics, you get a thicker-based oil that you can actually use for viscosity and lubrication, and you get the byproduct of methane gas, which they downplay, but we like that because we can use that for heating and cooking our food. So what you've seen is a process right there where you can use Brown's gas, recycle plastic, and create something in a community that will benefit the environment and make you guys more self-sufficient, okay? So in any type of scenario, this is very key. Okay, I went back to university. I started studying some welding processes so I could understand how hydrogen fit in with welding. And what I found was that our welding shop there, it's arguably one of the best welding programs in the entire western United States. We go through $2,000 a week in fuel gas alone, okay? That's $8,000 a month in propylene. We don't use acetylene because acetylene's too high in carbon now. Industry standard is going to propylene. We use propylene through $2,000 a month in propylene, which is about half of what we'd use if we used acetylene, because propylene's cheaper. Oh, I'm out again. Oh, okay. I'll just speak up. What we found was that we could substitute hydrogen. What I found in this shop was that we could substitute hydrogen for about $500 a week of their fuel gas bill. Still need propylene for certain things. Thank you. We still need propylene for certain things, but we can use Brown's gas for scarfing. Scarfing is it's the most expensive form of oxygen acetylene cutting. It metal. It cuts off metal pieces that are too large to grind off. You use a scarfing torch and cut it off. Brown's gas lends itself incredibly well to that because it burns through anything. It cuts through the steel. You just add a little bit of oxygen to it, and boom, you're using. We could save $500 a week just in the scarfing process. Some cutting still needs to be done with oxygen propylene, but a lot of it can be done with the hydrogen. And heat treating. Oh, heat treating is so much fun. Oh man, it is so cool. You can because Brown's gas is implosive, you take the torch and you put it on a single spot, like right there. I can heat treat that one location, and nothing else gets solid, and that location gets incredibly hot. And I'll pass this around in a minute for another example. But very important stuff. I'm taking too much time because I want to get to the fun stuff. The other thing is it's very clean. Because it's burning, because it's clean burning, we're not releasing a lot of the gases that would normally recur. So it's a very clean alternative. How much can you save? We were saving. We figured we could save about $500 a week by switching over to propylene or hydrogen instead of just constantly using propylene. Moon-based scenario. That's my word for what's the worst case scenario? You got to live in a cave. You can't be outside. This is absolutely key for rebuilding civilization. We'll talk about that in a little bit more. Another system for the hydrogen is boosting generators and large power plants. A friend of mine is over in the Philippines right now. 90%, if you buy something that says made in the Philippines or made in one of those places, 90% of their power comes from dirty, burning, sulfur-emitting diesel fuel. Okay? We are literally, more emissions come from the Philippines than the cars in the United States, just from their power plants. Okay? If you buy from them, that's where it's coming from. So he's over there, and he's got the most god-awful units ever made. They're one step ahead of the mason jars with the little wires wrapped into it, which are little tiny bombs, hand grenades, hydrogen hand grenades. But his stuff is working. He's got the cool little design. He's got it in a plastic box. They're boosting efficiency by 15%, and they're cutting out 50% of the emissions. And he got in, and he made some friends, and there'll be about 50% of the power plants over in the Philippines will be converted over in the next 3 years. Okay, so that's really exciting. Okay, they're not as efficient, but they are working, and because they're burning, it's the clean alternative. They're burning the fuels that would normally be emitted as waste. It's working pretty well. But what he's doing is he's self-running it. He's taking the power from their generator, powering his hydrogen unit, and sending it back into his air intake. That's good. It's okay. It's what everybody's doing. It's what you do when you run a car. It's what you do when you put it on a truck. But let me show you something that's better. Okay, can we turn on this Ninja on this thing? Thank you. A friend of mine bought this unit right here, and he let me bring it here today. No, the Ninja. John? The Ninja, to see this one? Yeah, okay, thanks. Better turn that off. A friend of mine bought this unit because, like I said, he lives in the mountains. We figured it out using his solar panels and his generator. He can run 90% savings on his diesel generator and completely disconnect from the grid. He'll be self-running. It's very, very cool. And he doesn't have to have any batteries. That's the problem with solar and wind power, is the battery system. There's no efficient way of storing the energy. But with this, we store the energy as a combustible gas that doesn't lose its efficiency. It's fantastic. Yes?
You can store the energy in a supercapacitor.
What's that?
They have now a supercapacitor that you can store enormous amounts of energy in a small volume. Not only can you store it, but you can put it in as fast as you can put it in.
He said that you can store energy in the supercapacitors, and that's fantastic. But I don't have the money for a supercapacitor. We'll see where they go. Looking forward to seeing where the technology goes. Hey, John? Yeah. Okay. Oh, no problem. Okay, so I'll show you that in a second here. Where was I here? Okay, anyway, what we found, what I'm about to show you, this is one of the very cool things that I learned this year. You can, what I'm about to show you is how to run a generator strictly on water itself. And don't believe the water, oh, we're running, running this car on water and stuff like that. I haven't seen anybody actually prove it yet. But there are some tricks that you can do it. Using this technology and using a vapor injection, you can actually run an engine on water. And this is what we did. Took 300 watts worth of solar panels, okay? 300, okay. There we go. Took 300 watts worth of solar panels, running something like this, and a little fountain vaporizer. Anybody seen those things? They've got the blue glass deal, and the vapor kind of rolls out. Yes, the ultrasonic exciters. They vaporize the water, and they create little cloud vapors in your little fountain. What you do is you take one of those and you put it into a 5-gallon bucket. This is what we did. We put it into a 5-gallon bucket. We ran the air intake through the of a diesel generator. The air intake through a 5-gallon bucket with a vaporizer in the bottom, vaporizing the water, and ran that to the air intake, and then put the hydrogen right there from a solar panel into the diesel generator. The reason why we use diesel is because diesels, they don't care where the spark ignition is, because they don't have a spark. Okay, if you use gasoline, you have to tear out the ignition, you have to tear out the spark, excuse me, the magneto telling you when the spark is, and you have to put in a new circuit. So forget about gasoline. Diesel generator. Use the 5-gallon bucket, generating the fog. The air goes through to the diesel generator. Put the hydrogen there. The whole thing's powered off of solar, and what you have is a voltage multiplier. We got 12 volts, 300 watts coming off the solar panel, generating the hydrogen and the vapor, going into a 5,000 watt diesel generator. Okay, we're not over Unity. There is over Unity. I've seen 10 of them in the last 5 years. But what we're doing is we're running on water. And what this system here is a friend of mine ordered this to go into his diesel generator so that he can run his facility in the mountains. We don't have. Oh, That's why I got the flashlight. We've got to get through all of this so I can get to the really exciting stuff, because this is boring. What we have here is gas coming out of the generator, feeding the excuse me, the reservoir, and excuse me, it's a reservoir and also the first level of safety. So it bubbles through there and washes out all of its sodium hydroxide, so it stays in the system. Then the gas goes down here. I don't know if you can see it. No, you can't see it very well. There's a hose that leads the water back to the generator. So what you get is a cycle of gas and water, water returning, gas and water, water returning. Then you come off the top of that, drop down here to the bottom of this side, which is your first stage of bubbler. And what happens is the gas goes through, you got about halfway full of water here, and the gas bubbles through that, and all the rest of your sodium hydroxide gets washed out, and then your the fuel gas comes out the top and goes to your generator. All right? So that's the bare bones basic system right here. What's really cool about this is I figured out how to, I don't have to punch holes in the shell at all. I have AC input, or excuse me, a DC input, 120 volts, positive here, negative here, and you don't have any holes in your generator at all. Everything is completely contained. Real neat little system. Anyone can do it. I'll teach you how to do it. You just weld a couple plates to the inside of your stainless steel plate and bolt it together. Fast, easy, and it's bomb-proof. I cut my teeth on the oil wells in Southern California. Oil wells and diesel over-the-road trucks. There's no conditions on this planet that are worse than those two. 130 degrees in the air in Bakersfield, California, standing next to, and corrosive environment, standing next to those oil pumps. They eat the stuff that comes out of the ground eats steel for breakfast. And so this is the best system that I could figure out how to put together. You see the dry cells on the internet. They're great for experimenting. They will not last in the field. They will not last in a harsh environment. Excuse me. We can talk about spacing and all that, but basically I followed the Bob Boyce method of 1/8-inch spacing, 2.34 volts per cell, and 1/4 of an amp per square inch. 1/4 of an amp per square inch is the rule. If you go over that, you will start destroying your plates. Okay? So let me repeat that. 1/8-inch spacing, 2.34 volts per cell maximum, and 1/4 of an amp per square inch on the plate. So like this, if we had the entire thing, this is a 6x6 plate, if we used the entire plate as a surface, we could only go to 9 amps on this plate. Okay? If you start going over that, you will break down your cell, or you will break down your metal. Now I get people say, well, what if I put in frequencies and I can go up to 40 amps? Okay? Follow the rules. All right? And I'll tell you why. Because if you run that thing for 6 months, and we've done this, you run it for that thing for 6 months, you'll form a crystalline layer on the surface of the metal, and those plates will stop producing hydrogen. Okay? So if you follow the rules, you will get a system, and I've got systems that have been running for 5 years now. Okay? Some of them running for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 3 years straight. 316 stainless. I worked with Bob Boyce a while back. I wish he was here. I don't know why he's not here. I worked with Bob Boyce a while back, and he said, I believe that 304 is going to be less efficient than 316, but I just don't know. I immediately went home, bought some 304, and threw it in to the same system, and I lost 25% efficiency. So I have not, because I want to focus on what everyone has access to and anyone can use. 316 stainless. Every once in a while they get L, but I just always buy 316. I buy the cheapest 316 possible. So I don't know exactly what grade. Like I said, every once in a while it's 316L. So That's my standby. Yes. Here's the secret. See this PVC? This is CPVC. It's it'll go up to 120 degrees. If you're up to 120 degrees in your cell, something's wrong. Water does not boil at 220 degrees. Water does not boil at 212 degrees in these units. Water boils at 140 degrees in these units. If you're boiling water, you're wasting energy and producing vapor. Bad, bad, bad. You have to. This is why when I was building units for the oil wells in Southern California, I learned this the hard way, really hard way. At 140 degrees, water starts boiling in this system, and then you're pumping water vapor instead of hydrogen and oxygen, and bad things are going to happen. So you have to develop a system, you have to develop a unit that can run below 140 degrees, preferably no more than 120. Your optimum is going to be 98.6, interestingly enough, okay? I built units that can be immersed in water because actually in the air itself around these engines in Southern California was 130 to 140 degrees. And so we actually had to water cool the entire thing. And that's a pain, but you can do it. And it led to amazing efficiencies. Yes? The gauge doesn't matter because you're not going to burn them up. But if you get down below 20 or 22 gauge, you start getting flexing. And when you imagine that your plates are this far apart, and you get a flex in there, suddenly they're in like this, and they're this far apart, and you get a disparity between your amperages, and that's going to start burning it up. This is why I do not like round tubular units. Okay, and I'll show you some in a little bit, but round tubular units, you cannot match your amperages. So your amperage on the inside is going to be your amperage on the inside is going to be 9 amps, and your amperage on the outside is going to be a lot less than that, and so you're not getting equal variation. We bought some very popular units. We ran them at full power, and literally when we opened that thing up after a week, it fell in half because the round, you cannot match your amperages. So I will always go with the plates. Now in these I went with round plates. Okay, they're round plates. I had them cut out on a water jet. Very simple to do. And I didn't talk about the spacers. These spacers are made out of the CPVC. I took a piece of CPVC, put it on a lathe, and just shaved off 1/8-inch spacers. Oh God, that takes a long time. Really long time. Then I discovered that I could use my three-axis CNC mill, put a little cutter on that thing, and just cut off. Used a diamond grinding wheel, cut them off, and create all the spacers, trim them, and then just put them in place. That's the easiest way to do it. I don't care about rubberizing the whole thing and making it completely sealed. What I found was that the efficiency levels don't match the amount of money and energy you put into it. So it doesn't really matter. You just put those CPVC rings in there and push them together. I create little springs in here out of folded stainless steel so that when I jam that thing together, the entire inside of this box is in compression. It's all in compression, so those plates are all held in place. Then you use Teflon spacers around the outside. A sheet of Teflon. You put that in first and then load it with your plates. Teflon will go up to 500 degrees. So if somebody pours in seawater in here, it's not going to burn itself up, because it will go up to about 300 degrees if you pour seawater into this thing. But that's another story. We'll get to that. So the Teflon will keep that from ever happening. So there's some secrets for the builders, the hydrogen builders in here. Like I said, 316 stainless. I like 18 gauge. 18 gauge is it's a good. It stays pretty stable, and it's cheap, and it's easy to work. If you go to 16, it's more expensive to cut, stuff like that. I don't recommend people build these for their hydrogen devices. I recommend people build these because these are indestructible. These are fun, and I'll get to why I built this and why it's sitting here. But What's that? For sodium hydroxide, it's always going to be 1/8 inch. Okay? Even George Wiseman, who pioneered the building of the generators, went from 1/2 inch down to 1/8 inch. Okay? Because he found that Bob Boyce was right. It's more efficient to go an 1/8 inch instead of a 1/2 inch. If you start going smaller, all of your parameters change. Your voltage, your maximum voltage changes, your maximum current changes, and your efficiency level changes. And that's in here, and we'll get to that. All right, moving right along. Can we go back to the PowerPoint, John? The PowerPoint, please? Oh. Okay, thank you very much. All right, so what I've just described is a system of using solar powered, because that way you don't have any parasitic drag, to boost a generator or something like that. Use the vapor for the octane. See, when you use that little vapor generator, you're using the water as a fuel, but you're also using it to cool down the explosion. Like I mentioned earlier, hydrogen and oxygen, the most powerful destructive force in the galaxy, but it happens so fast, it's gone. Now, okay, and here I have to dispel something else. Brown's gas is implosive, right? When you combust it, it's an implosion, not an explosion. Okay, wow. Tough crowd, never mind. That's a big thing. Everybody says, oh, it's implosive, not explosive. And you've seen pictures of them imploding cans and stuff like that, and nuclear remediation by implosion. True Brown's gas can do that. But it's a very powerful implosion followed by a super powerful explosion. And I had a friend that actually wanted to test this. He had a syringe, a little glass syringe, and he was going to fill it with Brown's gas, and then he was going to light the end, and he was going to watch the plunger go in. No, he was going to get shrapnel and everything all over the place. It's an implosion followed by a powerful explosion, which, interestingly enough, is exactly how they have to explode nuclear bombs. Powerful implosion creating a geometrical structure in the plasma of the plutonium, followed by an incredibly powerful explosion, all right? Same thing with the hydrogen. Instantaneous implosion followed by a powerful explosion. When you see them suck the water out from a 5-gallon bucket into the thing that they filled with Brown's gas, and it sucks all the water out and there's a vacuum over there, they've quenched the explosion using the water. That's why it is. But please don't play around with Brown's gas thinking that you will see an implosion. It's a good way to blow yourself up. Oh, somebody did that. 4 or 5 months ago, some guy in California figured he'd compress Brown's gas. Don't ever compress Brown's gas. It's a good way to, go see Jesus. Go to church instead. Come on. Okay. Now, the other thing that I built this for was to experiment with vacuum, and this is the only way you can use a vacuum-assisted system to boost your hydrogen in a car is if you do not use sodium hydroxide or any type of caustic solution. I know that we're getting really techy and technical, and we'll get to the fun stuff here. We're going to skip that completely because we've been talking too long. Okay. If you use a different catalyst, you can use vacuum assist, and you will get better gas from a vacuum-assisted unit than you will with brute force electrolysis, okay? But with a vacuum-assisted unit, you use a different catalyst, and we can talk about that. Actually, you can use my gold, you can use colloidal silver, you can use spring water, you can use all sorts of fun stuff. And what you will find is that it will separate, and you don't care about having to filter that out. You can run that right into your engine. So you can hook it up to a vacuum line on your engine, vacuum assist separate, and run that into your intake, and boom, you will have a much better gas and a much better efficiency. You'll use a fraction of the power if you vacuum assist it, okay? So, very techy. That's another thing that this was built for. So I built it to withstand a vacuum, because when you vacuum assist, did you know that large-scale industrial vacuum pumps have a tendency to disintegrate? Why is that? Anybody want to take a guess? Large-scale vacuum pumps, pulling the vacuum out of things that have liquid in them have a tendency to disintegrate because of that most terrible thing that we hear in the hydrogen world, hydrogen embrittlement. I'm not going to go into it, but literally when a vacuum pump pumps all the air out, it takes all the water out of something too. It takes all the moisture out of the air. But in the process, it separates the oxygen and hydrogen, and its components become embrittled by the pure hydrogen in that system. Okay? We really don't care about vacuum embrittlement, or hydrogen embrittlement in this. It's almost a myth, so we're not even going to talk about it. But in a vacuum pump, you're pulling out so much hydrogen, the parts become embrittled, and the pumps have a tendency to disintegrate. So that was the first clue. I said, well, why are they disintegrating? Well, they're disintegrating because of hydrogen embrittlement. So does that mean that a vacuum pulls out hydrogen and oxygen out of the water? Yeah, it does. That's why vacuum assist is so awesome when it comes to these hydrogen devices. Okay, so you have to change the parameters. You can't use the sodium hydroxide. You have to use something else, and that's when it gets really exciting. So we're going to move on. Now we're cooking with water or gas. You know what? We don't even have to. I've given you all the parameters. What we can use biogas. Excuse me. We can use gasification, cool off the fuel, boosting the same way we boosted that Mr. Heater. Do the same thing with your cooking fuel. Okay, that's what they're doing actually in one of the resorts. They're running solar hydrogen. They run it. They boost their propane. They use a tenth to a 50th of the amount of propane, depending on the amount of heat they need. And so literally, the average person could have a 1,000-gallon tank and never fill that thing up the rest of their lives if you use the boosting with the hydrogen. All right. You know what? That's all. I want to talk about the fun stuff, okay? Because this is what we're really here for. Really cool stuff. Of course, we have to go back to 1910 to get to it, but this is a system whereby a person can use hydrogen and oxygen to create synthetic gems. These gems were so perfect that the people actually had to add impurities to signify that they were not, in fact, perfectly cut gems that they were pulling out of mines. Okay, this is a ruby. It's a synthetic ruby created using this system, oxygen, hydrogen. It's a process called flame fusion. I'll read it real quick. Flame fusion was the first commercially successful method of manufacturing synthetic gemstones developed in 1902, by the French chemist Auguste Verneuil. It was primarily used to produce the ruby and sapphire varieties of corundum, as well as the diamond simulants rutile and strontium titaniate. The principle of the process involves melting a finely powdered substance using an oxygen-hydrogen flame and crystallizing the melted droplets into a brule. I think that's brule. The process is considered to be the founding step of modern industrial crystal growth technology. These are some compared to that. This is a system whereby we can actually, pardon me, we can actually start to use Brown's gas to move away from the idea of making fuels. How much do we actually use per year in fuel? I mean, I use a lot. I drive about 1,500 to 3,000 miles a month. Okay, so I use a lot. How much do we use in electricity? My electricity to run my shop is about $30 a month. My house, with all the various things that we do there, it's about $150 a month. So yeah, it'd be nice to save that, but is that much money in the long run? What this is a system that we can suddenly start to see independence, not just energy independence, not just social independence, but literally monetary independence using Brown's gas technology. So let's take a hypothetical example. Let's say that everybody in this section lived in the same neighborhood right here. And we got a couple people over here who are mechanically inclined, and a couple people over here who have time on their hands, and a couple people over there who have some money. Bruce, you're the money man. Okay, so we got the mechanically inclined people in the community building a hydrogen device, and this thing, oh, by the way, that's just this right here. Oh, let's pass it around, actually. Building this. We got a couple people with their time on their hands, and the money guys, you know, feed it into it. And a couple people with their time in their hands just spend their day making gemstones. Oh, and it gets more fun than this. This is just the beginning. See, the nth degree, the fun stuff, we'll get there. Okay? You make gemstones. Where do you sell gems? Hey man, I got a ruby. You buy some rubies? Sapphires? Sapphires? Diamonds? No. This is dangerous. Quartzsite, Arizona. Largest rock and gem show in the world. Everything that can trade hands in the rock and gem world trades hands at this place. Cash sales, oh boy howdy. Trades, oh, there's lots of that going on. You trade a gemstone. As a matter of fact, the largest platinum nugget, the size of my thumb, nobody knows this, it was synthetic. The largest platinum nugget in the world was sold at Quartzsite, Arizona for $57,000. It was made on a benchtop device similar to what you're seeing right here. It took 3 hours to make, and he sold it at Quartzsite, Arizona for $57,000. Okay? Cash sale. You don't even have to do that. You go there, you trade these. Now don't get greedy, all right? I like greed, but stupid greed is bad, okay? If you've got a gemstone that when it's cut, oh, a faceting machine that you can buy, you guys with a lot of time on your hands, you guys with the money buy it for these guys. Faceting machine costs about $1,500 if you get it used. Real nice faceting machine to facet the gemstones. If you've got a gem that should be worth $5,000, go out and be happy to sell it for $1,000, okay? Because that allows you to turn it over and keep doing this, and you'll fly under the radar, okay? Go to Quartzsite, Arizona, make a trade. Buy something that everybody likes. Cathedrals, okay? Trade the gem for the cathedral. This happens all the time, so this is not something weird that I'm talking about, because I spent several years in Quartzsite. Trade the gem for the cathedrals, sell the cathedrals. You get you get an income every month from selling the cathedrals, and you don't have this huge income from the gemstones all at once. This is something to think about, because this allows all the people that are playing with hydrogen to suddenly start seeing the idea of financial independence. Yes? Cathedrals are the beautiful amethyst. They're not petrified, but they're like geodes, only big. They're cathedrals that have amethyst stones growing into them and everything. Real big money. You buy them at Quartzsite for $80. You take them to Hollywood. You sell them for $500 or $1,000. This way, you trade, and then you go out and you sell them, and you've got a way to make money that you kind of fly under the radar. Wow, I'm throwing up lots of red flags here. I know that there are people here reporting to the government. I'm not saying anything new, but it doesn't matter. Okay, here's some really fun stuff. Gold, platinum, and silver. Oh my! All right, who here has played with black sands? Okay. Who here knows that platinum content in black sands is through the roof, but the energy required to get it out is tremendous? Okay. Well, what do we have here? With the hydrogen, but a way to deliver huge amounts of energy with very little cost. And you hook it up to a solar panel, and you don't have very much cost at all. What I did with this does double duty at my place. It actually mounts, and I'll pass this around right now. It mounts in here. This is its water jacket. Water comes in here, goes out there. So eventually it'll serve to heat water. But what I did with this was put black sands in here and start melting it, okay? Melting the black sands, and guess what's the heaviest elements in the black sands? Iron's lighter than those guys. So it goes to the top, vaporizes off, and the bigger stuff falls to the bottom, okay? So my friend with the detector over in Utah, I hope that he gets here. He's developed a radical detector, detects things at a distance. He says, oh yeah, huge amounts of platinum and black sands. I'm not ready to sell it. I'm just playing right now. But essentially what you do, here, I'll just pass this around. There you go. Please don't tip it over. You can pull it apart, but don't tip it over because there's sand in it. What you'll do is you'll just create a little, you just start heating it up, and all the heavy elements will drop to the bottom, and the lighter elements will go to the top and vaporize. Okay? Yeah, did you have a question? Oh, okay. And so you can actually start to process, or like I said, don't get greedy. You don't have to process hundreds of tons, okay? Start doing that, and you start throwing red flags up. But if you process, if you got this thing going here, powered off of the sun, powered off of solar power, feeding in there, and it just sits there and generates heat, just generates heat for 3 or 4 hours a day, and you get an ounce a week. How many people couldn't deal with $2,000 extra per week? Yes?
What about the vapors? Are they dangerous?
The vapors of black sands are dangerous. So what you want to do is you want to take one of these things, pipe it over to a bubbler, okay? Remember, I'm a big fan of safety, so just pipe it back to a bubbler and collect the vapors in there. And what you will find is that the vapors themselves have values in them, okay? But we won't go into that. Excuse me. All right, so we're here. Heavier elements will always fall. Now, before I go to the next slide, I want to talk about something. Actually, what is the next slide? Yep, okay. Here's a story about how I got involved with hydrogen in the first place. And I can see we're starting to get a little, so I'm going to tell a story real quick here. I was adopted by a Native American tribe many years back, and my tribal elder came to me and said, Vernon, what do you think about this hydrogen stuff? Is there a way to use the hydrogen to maybe cut down on our fuel and such? And he says, I started playing around with this, and he describes his setup, okay, literally. Little plastic baggies, Ziploc ties holding the stainless steel things apart, plastic baggies duct taped into a cardboard box, little alligator electrodes clipped onto these things, and he starts describing the amount of hydrogen he's getting out of this thing, okay? He's describing, and it's splashing out of the box, and it's getting everything all wet. I think, well, this is very cool. He had hired 3 engineers to work on developing hydrogen for cars, okay? And they were using spring water coming out of the mountains, no catalysts, using spring water and frequencies going in there to separate the oxygen and hydrogen. So they were playing around with this, and they got this red deposit on the bottom of those little Ziploc baggies. They got this red stuff starting to fall out, and it would short out their electrodes, their plates. So they'd take it all out, pour it into a bucket, refill it with spring water, and start all over again, okay? And this bucket would fill up, and it condense, and they fill up, and it would get redder and redder and such. Finally, one day, they said, well, what is that? What is that red stuff in there? So they sent it to a lab up in Salt Lake. And you know what? In that bucket, they had about $4,000 worth of gold particulates. So the two of the engineers said, oh, hell, there's no money in hydrogen, there's no future in that, we want the gold. So they went and bought a houseboat on the Great Salt Lake, got a couple of solar panels, created a hydrogen device that had a space underneath. They just take the water out of the Salt Lake, pour it into their devices, and just let it go. They get about $2,000 a month off of this whole deal. But $2,000 a month to generate a fuel that they could use to cook and to heat and to create electricity, and their byproduct is gold? Wait a minute. Paradigm shift? Light bulb. So, this was staring me in the face for the last 5 years, and I guess it's a testament to, the fact that I'm driven by the universe to discover, new and better ways to do everything, that I didn't even think about that, okay? I've known that for 5 or 6 years. I literally didn't even think about what to do with that until this last year when some very interesting things happened. I said, I want to explore this. So that aside, I started exploring the idea of using Brown's gas for health and healing. And once again, you can't use sodium hydroxide because you can't have that stuff going into your lungs. So I wanted a device that allowed me to take literally the gas coming right out of this thing and allow me to breathe that without having to run it through any bubblers or anything else. I wanted it to go directly into me. When you take monoatomic oxygen and hydrogen in the stoichiometric ratio to make water, you put that into your body, amazing things happen. It rehydrates your tissues from the inside out, re-energizes your tissues. As a matter of fact, there's a guy here that was talking about that. I can't remember his name. It actually re-energizes them with the proper electrical potential because the hydrogen goes on the outside, the oxygen goes in, and there's an exchange, and you get negative and positive. Very energizing. You re-energize your cells, which are in fact little hydrogen fusion power plants. We won't go into that. So Brown's gas, pure Brown's gas going into your body is incredibly, incredibly healing. I mean, they're cutting out, they're healing chronic migraines with this stuff because it hydrates the tissues from the inside out. Migraines are the meninges shrinking because they're too dried out, and so they're rehydrating and they come back to normal. Healing sprains, healing all sorts of things using the Brown's gas. Brown's gas, excuse me, when Ewell Brown was doing his research, he could send people down twice as deep underwater using Brown's gas rather than oxygen. They could go twice as deep and come up 3 times as fast. No bends, no nitrogen poisoning, nothing like that, because the very oxygen that was going into their bodies, that was oxygenating them, was turning right back into water and rehydrating them. So there was nothing to expand, nothing to poison them as they're coming up from the ocean. So I started experimenting with that, and I discovered something very strange. When I changed the parameters, I started dropping out elements, and I was using our gold and platinum and stuff like that, and I started dropping out lots of elements. So what I found was that these guys that were using frequencies, I'm going to get, sorry, this is so exciting to me. I'm almost jumping to the end, and I'm trying not to, okay? These guys were using frequencies, and they were dropping out elements, okay? And I talked about this last year using a septic system, and it's real technology. There's a patent back in the 70s. Mitch can actually tell you about it too. They would purify the septic water using frequencies and giant stainless steel plates, and by the time they got to the end, it was practically distilled, and then they pulled out the various minerals coming out of and they sold those as industrial compounds, okay? So the whole thing was self-sustaining because the hydrogen and methane gas coming off of the process was recycled back to diesel generators to power the process, and it was powered by human waste. You have a power plant using no chemicals that processes human waste and creates viable products. If that's not a self-sufficient community technology, I don't know what is. So, yes? You were the one telling me about it. He's the one to talk to, guys. We need to keep moving because we're running. How long have I been talking? Okay. So this is cool because these hydrogen guys had inadvertently hit on a way of dropping out elements out of the water. Every day, $14 million worth of gold flows out of Colorado in the Colorado rivers. One day. In 1 cubic kilometer of seawater, there is $24 million worth of gold in 1 cubic kilometer of seawater. In the oil wells in Southern California, they have to pump the seawater that comes up with they have to pump the underground water brine that comes up with the oil. They have to pump it back underground. $27 million a month goes through there of gold, not even counting platinum. So that's something to think about as we start looking at purifying water, finding enough drinking water. Not only do we have to feed the 9 billion people, we also have to find drinking water for them. So something to think about. All of these are byproducts that help us sustain the process. Now here we come to the really interesting, amazing part. And this is why this device is actually the coolest thing I've ever built. because this device works off of the sun, it has no, I don't have to run it off of electricity or anything like that. I just feed it the sun or wind power or whatever. How do I say this even without sounding insane? There were a couple of researchers in Texas 10 years back doing Joe cell research, and they decided not to put regular water or spring water in their Joe cell. What they did was they put in Clark's concentrated mineral toddy. Anybody familiar with that? Wow, I'm old. It's a bioavailable source of minerals. It's leached out of humic source with folic acid, and it's really, really good for your body. It's bioavailable liquid minerals. They poured that into the Joe cell. Well, they took a spectroscopic analysis of all of the minerals in it before, and they knew exactly how much they'd poured in there. Okay? They put electricity across it, separated the oxygen and hydrogen out of there, and recombined it in a Brown's gas torch and recollected the water. Okay? So water here, separated and recombined here. Okay? After a little while, this thing started fuzzing up because you can't run a hydrogen torch, you can't run a hydrogen generator on minerals. But it starts fuzzing up, and it was just bubbling over, and after a little while it shorted out because the mineral content was so high in the bottom of it. Well, that got me thinking, why the water still looks the same, but it's concentrated at the bottom, and the rest of the water still looks the same. It's supposed to be dropping out, right? So what they did is they took that out, they strained off all the extra stuff, they knew exactly how much minerals they were putting back in, they put that back in there, they put the water back in there and started over. Now wait a minute, they've got a device, they just separated it out, and now they've got more than what they started with. So then they do it again, separate the oxygen and hydrogen, recombine it. Drop out minerals out of the bottom until it shorts out, fuzzes out, boils over. Scrapes off the minerals, filters it out, puts the water back in, starts all over again. They just multiplied what they had. Now they got twice as much. They did this again. Now they got 3 times as much. They did this again. They got 4 times as much. They did this 13 times. They multiplied their minerals 13 times. How is that possible? They didn't use up little micrometers. We went in there, we measured the micrometers, measured the plate size. There was no plate degradation. There's nothing. What we're seeing here, yes? They did spectroscopic analysis. It was exactly as if they had the exact same minerals that they started with the Clark's minerals. They had multiplied the amount of minerals 13 times in that process. They spectroscopically analyzed it. They ended up with 13 times more than they started with. Yes?
Did they use different water?
Nope, they used the same water all over again. Wow. They used the same water back and forth. It was a closed system, and more was coming out. Why is that? How is that possible? Yes? Yeah, if you go to organominerals, or they're all the same type of minerals. They're just a mineral toddy in liquid form. What we have done is we're now seeing that hydrogen and oxygen and energy is the key to multiplying minerals, okay? I've been doing this for a long time in my alchemical studies. You take a stream of hydrogen and a stream of oxygen. Take a crystalline matrix of whatever you want to multiply and feed etheric energy through it. The etheric energy is patterned by the crystalline matrix, goes through the hydrogen and oxygen, and you have a spark there. So the hydrogen and oxygen becomes the material that you're working with. Boom, drops out, and you create new elements. If you've ever tried any of our electric water, if you've ever tried any of our stuff, literally, it tastes. You can do it. A friend of mine is now turning our gold concentrate that we have out there. He runs a process, and he's selling high purity gold chloride, made from water and energy. What we're looking at here now is a completely different paradigm. The paradigm that says we can take energy and create matter. That is the most important thing that I have ever learned is that water and hydrogen and oxygen can go through a template and create new matter using just energy. I challenge each and every one of you to do this. I have done it. I put a gold and platinum concentrate into this thing. We analyzed this with my friend's detector. I put a gold and platinum concentrate into this thing, ran it for 3 days, 16 volts, 1.5 amps, and what I did was I multiplied the colloidal gold and platinum about 10 times in that system, okay? This is a new age. This is like Star Trek replicators. This is the fuel that's going to power that. Literally multiplying minerals using hydrogen and oxygen energy. Real quick, 1 second. Here's a number. I said I was going to throw out some more numbers. What's the energy density of a vacuum? I can't remember the numbers, but here's the deal. In 1 cubic centimeter of the vacuum is enough energy to power the United States for a solid year, okay? That's in the vacuum. That's not counting protons. If you guys get Nassim Haramein's work and you start looking at the real energy available, it's astronomical. And if you can find a way to take that energy and imprint it and create new matter, then, you know, everything becomes possible. I mean, we have the ability, if we were just looking at the idea of dropping out minerals out of the water, that's plenty amazing. You need frequencies to do it. We can now mine the ocean. We don't have to dig into the ground. We can mine the ocean and drop the stuff out of the water. But if we look at this, I can be crazy. I don't have any connection to being right or wrong, but I know that this is the reality. We can multiply minerals we can multiply elements this way and create new matter with energy. And it's the future of civilization on this planet. I have always thought, since I started the hydrogen work, I've always thought that hydrogen was an interim technology, that it would get us from internal combustion engines to running on magnets, running on the ether, running on the vacuum. But this summer, as I started seeing how much I was multiplying minerals, seeing how I wasn't even just multiplying elements. I was multiplying chemical compounds that don't exist in nature. Because when I started running certain alchemical fluids that take years to make through this thing, I started making these elements, or making this fluid, in a day. I couldn't believe it. It takes me a year to process certain things and go through the whole process and make this fluid. Some of you have seen the gold stuff, and that's part of it. Some of you have actually seen our gold fluid that we use to power our water machine. But I was recreating it in a day. That stuff doesn't exist in nature. It's not a single element. I was creating a complex molecule that doesn't even exist in nature in a single day.